The harsh fluorescent lights of the evergreen boutique seemed to buzz with accusation as 16-year-old Matteo stood frozen, the owner's sharp
Empty
voice
your
cutting through the
pockets,
quiet
now.
store. Empty your pockets, now. He'd only come in to buy a birthday gift for his mom, using the money he'd saved for weeks from his after-school job. Now, every eye in the small shop was on him, suspicion turning his face a deep burning red as the owner, a woman named Carol, pointed a trembling finger toward his jacket. This was a moment of injustice that could have ended in 100 different ways, but the way it actually unfolded would send ripples through an entire city. We're about to explore how a single, baseless accusation lit a fire that couldn't be contained, so stay with us to see how it all played out. The boutique was Carol's whole world, but lately that world had been shrinking. It was a small, curated space in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood in Austin, Texas. 10 years ago, when she'd first opened, the area was different, quieter. Now, new condos and expensive coffee shops were pushing out the old family-owned businesses, and with them, the familiar faces she knew. Carol saw the changes not as growth, but as an invasion. Her sales were down, the rent was up, and a knot of bitter resentment was permanently tied in her stomach. She looked at Matteo with his faded jeans and plain hoodie and didn't see a kid looking for a gift. She saw a symbol of everything that was going wrong. He had been lingering near a display of delicate silver-stamped bracelets for a little too long, his hands in his pockets. In Carol's anxious mind, that was enough. Matteo's mind went blank with panic. He was a good kid, a straight-A student who worked a weekend job bussing tables to help his family. He'd never been in trouble. His hands trembled as he slowly pulled them from his jacket pockets, revealing nothing but his old cracked screen phone and a crumpled $10 bill. I wasn't doing anything, he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. I was just looking for something for my mom's birthday. His eyes darted around the store. 2 other customers, women in expensive-looking yoga pants, were now staring at him, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Their judgment felt like a physical blow. All of them, Carol snapped, her voice sharp and unforgiving. The inside pockets, too. I saw you slip something in there. This was a lie, born from a desperate need to be right, to have found a target for her free-floating anger and fear. Just then, the little bell above the door chimed. A man named Ben walked in, scrolling through his phone. He was a freelance journalist, always on the hunt for a story, but at that moment he was just looking for a last-minute birthday card for his sister. He immediately sensed the tension in the room. He saw the fear in Matteo's eyes and the aggressive posture of the woman behind the counter. He saw the other customers watching like it was a television show. His journalistic instincts kicked in. Without making it obvious, he unlocked his phone and hit the record button, holding it casually at his side. "Ma'am, what seems to be the problem here?" Ben asked, his voice calm and even. He took a step closer, positioning himself between Carol and Matteo. Carol's head whipped around, her eyes narrowing at the newcomer. "This is none of your business. This boy is a shoplifter, and I'm handling it." Ben kept his tone respectful. "He looks pretty scared. Maybe we can just talk this through. What do you think he took?" "I don't have to explain myself to you," Carol retorted, her voice rising. The sight of Ben's phone, which she now noticed was recording, sent a fresh jolt of fury through her. She felt cornered, challenged in her own store. Her attempt to assert control was backfiring. So she doubled down. "That's it. I'm calling the police," she declared, pulling her own phone from behind the counter. "You can explain to them why you're harassing me and defending a thief." Matteo, horrified at the mention of the police, just wanted to disappear. "Please don't," he pleaded, his eyes welling up. "I didn't take anything. I'll just go." He turned to leave, but Ben put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Don't run," Ben said softly. "You have nothing to run from." To Carol, he said, "Go ahead and call them, but this video is going online, all of it." Carol hesitated for a fraction of a second, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. She made the call. The encounter ended with 2 police officers arriving, questioning a humiliated Mateo on the sidewalk, and ultimately letting him go after finding nothing on him or the store's security footage. But the damage was done. That evening, Ben uploaded the 10-minute unedited video to his social media with a simple caption: "Evergreen Boutique in Austin, TX. The owner falsely accuses a local teenager of shoplifting. This is what gentrification can look like up close." By the next morning, the video had 10,000 views. By the end of the day, it had over 100,000. The comment section was a torrent of outrage. People from the neighborhood recognized Mateo as a quiet, respectful kid from a good family. Others shared their own uncomfortable experiences at Carol's shop. The story exploded. Ben's phone didn't stop buzzing with calls from local news outlets. He realized this was more than just a viral moment. It was a reflection of a deep-seated community wound. He started digging. He spent the next few days talking to people who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. They told him stories of Carol being cold and dismissive long before the new condos went up. They spoke of how she'd changed her inventory to cater exclusively to new, wealthier residents, ignoring her loyal, long-time customers. The root of her struggling business wasn't shoplifting. It was her own prejudice and refusal to be a part of the community she served. The first small win came 2 days after the incident. A local community organizer, a woman named Maria, saw the video and organized a peaceful protest. She expected maybe 20 people to show up. Over 200 came. They held signs that said, "This is our neighborhood too, and don't accuse our kids." Mateo's parents, who had initially been terrified of the attention, stood in the middle of the crowd, overwhelmed by the support. For the first time since he'd walked into that store, Mateo felt a flicker of hope. He wasn't just a victim, he was part of something bigger. But the fight was far from over. As the protests grew, so did the backlash. Carol's friends and a few loyal, wealthy customers rallied around her. They started a "We Stand with Carol" Facebook group. They painted her as a small business owner being attacked by a ruthless online mob. They called the boycott a form of cancel culture and accused Ben of editing the video to make Carol look bad, even though he had posted the raw, uncut footage. They called him a failed journalist, desperate for clicks. The narrative in the wider media began to shift. News reports, in an attempt to seem balanced, started giving equal weight to both sides, framing it as a complex issue of a struggling business owner versus an online campaign. The initial clarity of the injustice became murky, and the momentum of the boycott began to slow. Carol, feeling emboldened by the support, went on the offensive and filed a restraining order against Ben, claiming he was harassing her. For Mateo and his family, it was a devastating setback. It seemed like the power and money on Carol's side would inevitably win, and their fight for justice would just fade away. Ben wasn't about to let that happen. The restraining order was a temporary legal hurdle, but it lit a fire under him. He knew that to cut through the noise, he needed more than just the one video. He needed irrefutable proof of a pattern of behavior. He started working his sources, making calls, and digging through public records. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. He found a woman, Alicia, who had worked at Evergreen Boutique for 5 years before being fired 6 months ago. She reached out to Ben after seeing his initial video. She told him that Carol had an unspoken rule: follow any Black or Hispanic customer who entered the store. Alicia had been fired for poor performance, but the real reason, she claimed, was that she'd refused to treat customers like criminals. At first, it was just her word against Carol's. But then Alicia remembered something. Carol used to send her text messages during her shifts, complaining about the customers. Another group of them just walked in. Watch them closely, one message read. Did that guy buy anything, or was he just casing the place? Read another. Alicia had saved them all, a digital log of her former boss's paranoia and prejudice. She gave them to Ben. This was the final test, the key to unlocking the truth. Ben worked with a lawyer to verify the messages and wrote a detailed, in-depth article, publishing the texts alongside Alicia's testimony and interviews with other community members who had been profiled by Carol over the years. He posted it on his own small blog, but this time the story was too powerful to ignore. The climax was swift and decisive. The article was picked up by a major Texas newspaper, and from there, national news outlets. The undeniable proof in those text messages reignited the public outrage, but this time it was a firestorm. The We Stand With Carol page was flooded with angry comments and disappeared overnight. Customers who had defended her now fell silent. The boycott returned with a vengeance, but it was more than that. Her suppliers, worried about being associated with her, started pulling their products from her shelves. Her bank, citing the negative publicity, refused to extend her business loan. Within a month, Evergreen Boutique was empty, and a for lease sign was plastered on the window. Carol was forced into bankruptcy, her reputation destroyed not by an online mob, but by the weight of her own actions. The story doesn't end with a closed door, however. It ends with a new one opening. The empty storefront became a symbol of the community's victory. Led by Maria, the organizer, residents pooled their resources. They formed a cooperative, and with the help of a city grant for community-led businesses, they bought the space. It reopened 3 months later, not as a boutique, but as the Allwood Community Market, a vibrant space that sold everything from locally grown produce to art and clothing made by people from the neighborhood. Mateo's family was asked to join the co-op's board of directors, and Mateo, no longer the shy, quiet kid who was afraid to speak up, volunteered to run the market's social media. He wanted to make sure that everyone who walked through that door felt not suspicion, but a genuine, unconditional welcome. Ben's article won a state journalism award, but for him, the real prize was seeing a community heal itself, proving that sometimes a collective voice is the most powerful force for change there is. What do you think is the most effective way for a community to respond when they see an injustice in their own neighborhood? Is a boycott the right answer? Or are there better ways to create lasting change? I'd be interested to read your perspective in the comments. And if you believe that stories like these are important and need to be heard, please consider hitting that subscribe button and joining us for more. Your support helps us continue to share them.